Okay, so we're ready to move on, and we're actually going to move on to step 20, and you can see it's the preparation of the bottoms of the nacelles. You remember we got the wires coming through on the nacelle pylons, and we got a drill where they're going to be passed through in order to light the lights, and you can see that's in step 21. But before we do that, you guys remember we put the chrome paint on the inside of everything, and as a result we had a little bit of overspray on the surface of the ship. So before we paint, what I like to do is we take some of the paint thinner and what we're going to do is we're going to clean them all up. Let's see the way it looks before. Yeah, you can see they're all nice and clean. We got the reflective bottoms on. So now we're ready to paint them. Okay, so I like to get my friend Mr. Duct Tape, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the nacelle halves onto the jars. That way they're nice and secure, and it'll be stuck on, and that way there we won't have to worry about holding the edges or getting them messed up or what have you. This tape is very sticky. Yeah, you can see I like to put them on so when we paint they'll be held in place. You don't have to worry about them going anywhere. And we're going to use the chalky chicks. Okay, so we gave it a nice first coat, and we're going to let that sit, and we're going to let that dry. And when that's dry, we'll come back and we'll give it a second coat. Up until now, we've been putting 2 coats on everything. So we'll let it rest, let it dry, we'll come back and we'll put on another coat. Okay, so they had some time to dry, and what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the second coat on. That way there, it'll be even, You can see another coat should do it well. So let's get started. Here we go. And now we're going to let the paint dry. And the 2 coats we've been putting on up until this point should be enough. And when the paint is dry, then we can put the yellow stripe on. And we'll move on. Okay, so we had time for the paint to dry. You can see it looks pretty good with the 2 coats. So let's take them off the tape, the little helpers that we had. Okay, so you know the Enterprise D, the little details that they have around the Bassard collectors is that this grill is actually yellow. You know, I think instead I'm going to use the tester's paint, the oil base. It'll go on better and it'll adhere better. So we put the yellow strips on the nacelles, And I used the oil-based paint because it would go a little bit smoother, and I think it would adhere a little bit better, and there won't be as many clumps. So that's all set. So moving on to the paint guide where they have the decals. Let's see. The tops of the nacelles, you can see they have two decals that go on the ends, and the Starfleet insignia with the stripes that kind of go down the center of the top. So each nacelle top has 3 stickers. And let me show you guys the bottom real quick. So the bottom has those kind of designs with the ball on top, and they've got a couple on the bottom. Towards the back they have a couple of the red ones. I'm not sure, those aren't lights. I don't think they're lights, but there's a red stripe too. So what I think we're going to do is we're going to wait for these to dry so that we can handle them better. And once they're absolutely dry, what I want to do is I want to drill the holes where we're able to pass the wires through. And after we do that, then we can put the decals on, and they'll be all set to put onto the nacelle pylons. So when these are dry, these are all set to move on, we'll continue. So the nacelles had some time to dry. You can see these are the tops. And we're going to put these aside for a minute. And we're going to use the bottoms. And the bottoms, you can see in the instructions, in part 20, we're going to have to drill. So what I got to do is I got to mark exactly where the wires are coming up, where the slot is. And once I line it up, I'm going to mark with a marker where I'm going to drill a hole. That way there, I'll be able to go inside and it won't be a problem. Right, so right there. So these are the bottoms, and these are the tops. Like I said, we'll touch up everything we need to touch up towards the end. So let's get the tops. Again, you can see decal 32 is going to go with the aft end, and at the forward end there's decal 33 on each side. And that looks like it's really it for decals on the top part of the nacelle. Okay, so we got the decals on, we got the nacelles painted, we got the the detailing done. Both nacelles. These are the bottom parts, of course. And the tops. And the lights at the ends. So now we're ready to move on to the next step. All right, what is that? We're going to move on to step 20. And what that entails is putting the bottoms of the nacelles on. Drill 2 1/8 inch diameter holes, 1/8 inch diameter holes in the bottom of the lower warp drive engine housing. We did that. Carve one channel into each center rail as shown. You can see, I'll kind of take a notch out of that. You may wish to test fit the housing in place to mark the locations to drill. We've already done that. 17 port, 15 starboard, lower warp drive engine housing. Peel 2 of the 4 sections of the pressure-sensitive mylar that was removed from the electronics package and press 1 into each of the lower housings. Carefully cut out around the center rails. Around the front locator slots as shown, and trim away the excess from the edges and leave a good glue surface. Slip the wires through the holes and cement both lower housings into place. Carefully bend the wires and fit into the carved channels. Now you guys remember we had already painted the insides, the reflective chrome. I don't know if we're going to put that in as well. Probably should, it couldn't hurt. But anyway, we're ready to move on. So let's get the bottom of the ship. This has got to be what they're talking about. You can see the section. You want us to push it in the bottom, and then we would trim it. So it's kind of like a sticker that goes in. You can see how it kind of adheres. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the excess out. Alright, so let's show you guys when you put the reflective tape in. You can see it takes a little bit of time. I think what I'm going to do with this one is I'm going to try to cut it before I put it in. Let's see if I'm able to do that. Okay, so I put in all of the reflective backed paper or tape. We did put the reflective tape, the reflective paint in the entire ship, but I wanted to show you guys what it looked like with the foil. And you can see how it's going to reflect nicely. Again, I painted the inside with the chrome, but this will do nice. So now we're ready to, let's see, step 20. So we already put the reflective tape in, so now we're ready to put the bottoms of the nacelles onto the nacelle pylons. So let's move ahead with that. So these are the tops. I'll put those aside for now. And you remember we drilled. Okay, that's done. So, moving on to step 21, you can see we're going to be putting the lights on the blue part that's going to go with the bottom. So let's assemble the bulb tray. So we could put her aside for now. And we're going to put the bulb right up against, just like that. Carefully align 5 engine lights and 1 Bussard light into each of the 2 bulb trays as shown. Use a small amount of instant bond type cement to hold the bulbs in place. Cut the remaining length of paired wire into 4 sections approximately 3 inches long. Split each of the wires, remove 1/8 of the insulation from each, and solder the outside connections as shown below. Note, it is helpful to twist the light wires together prior to soldering. Okay, so I soldered all the leads together, just like the instructions called for, and the wires that were coming out from the bottom of the nacelles, I wired them into place, and the wires that I got are a little bit long, so I think I'm going to use the glue gun instead of the super glue to anchor these in place. So let's throw the switch, and you can see the nacelle is going to light up, the Bussard collector, all the way down to the back. Now, I don't know if it's because the age of the bulbs, but some of them aren't as bright as others. I'm just going to have to live with that. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the glue gun, and we're going to anchor the light strips into place. Okay, so now I'm ready to do the glue gun. So right about There, I want to be in the middle. Okay, so the wires are all nice and secure in place. And of course we want to make sure that they light up. You can see the nacelles, the rear impulse engines. Can't really see the windows because of the lights. But now we're all set to go ahead and close up the nacelles. All right, so it's nighttime and I just wanted to show you guys what she looked like in the dark. You can see the nacelles are going to be nice and bright. You can see the impulse engines, both on the saucer section and on the bottom of the dorsal hull. I don't know if you guys can see the nacelles are so bright you can't see the windows lit up. But I thought it was really cool looking in the dark, and I just wanted to include this in the video. So the next step would be to put on the tops of the nacelles and finish them off. Okay, so now it's time to move on to the tops of the nacelles. And you can see we're going to put the Bussard collectors on, and we're going to put on the backs of the warp engines. Let's see. Take a look at step 22. We had already done that. Step 23, we had finished that. And we're on to step 24. We put the onion skin tracing paper, and we put it in the top of the warp house, the warp drive engine housing. Cement both halves of the warp drive engine to the warp drive core, to the lower warp drive engine housing. Line the inside of the engine with onion skin tracing paper to diffuse the brightness of the light. Cement the upper warp drive engine housing to the lower warp drive engine housing. So we're going to have parts 504, 505, which is molded in blue, and part 400, which is molded in red, the Bussard collector. And we're going to do the same thing. Step 25 is for the other side, would be the starboard nacelle. Cement both warp drive engine and warp drive core to the lower warp drive engine housing. Line the inside of the engine with onion skin tracing paper to diffuse the brightness of the light. Again, we had already took care of that. Cement the upper warp drive engine housing to the lower warp drive engine housing. You can see we're going to be doing the same thing for port and starboard. Okay, so what I'm thinking of doing is, well, first we're going to get the parts ready. So we'll take the parts off the parts tree. It's pretty good. Now we get the one on the back. And the last piece on the tree. Okay, so we glued the port side on, and we're going to let that dry. You can see, guys, all the lengths of it. So when it's dry, we'll unclamp it, and I'll show you what it looks like. Okay, so we put the starboard top of the nacelle on, and I clamped it. It's all glued into place. And when that's dry and I take the clamps off, I'll show you what that looks like. Okay, so we had some time to dry. So let's take off the clamps and we'll see what we got. So let's take a look at what we got so far. Put that there. Get rid of the front support. Let's see. We'll make sure that none of the wires are crossed. So let's go ahead and put the lights out. And we'll darken the room. And we got to make sure that everything works. There, you can see the nacelles are lit. The impulse engines are lit. So that's all set. The windows. So that's looking pretty good. And put the light back on. So as of right now, let's see. So we had done steps 20. We did step 21. Let's see, we did step 22, step 23, step 24, and step 25. So believe it or not, we're ready to move on. And the next video is going to be the last one in a build. We're actually going to be finished. We're going to move on to step 24, and that'll be bringing everything together. I'm going to go ahead. We're going to, all the little pieces that need to be touched up again, all the light leaks that need to be filled, all the cracks, and then we're going to clear coat the whole thing, and she'll pretty much be done. So in the next video, we're going to move on to step 24, and I'll explain to you in the next video all the things that we're going to do to finish off this build. In the meantime, I thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.